Hello, my name is Shelley Sapson, and I'm the Director for Market Ready Insights, our in-house regulatory consulting program for health and nutrition businesses here at Informa Markets. I'm delighted to be with you here today. I work out of our Boulder, Colorado office in the United States, but have the good fortune to work with businesses from around the world. Market Ready helps companies interested in doing business in the US understand the regulatory requirements and prepare US compliant materials. I work closely with exhibitors at our Natural Products Expo, Supply Side, and Global FI North America events, as well as our own standards team, which establishes and upholds our show standards for these events. I'll be talking today about digital marketing compliance in the US. We'll take a look at the new compliance requirements Amazon implemented and the background for the increasing level of scrutiny brands are receiving. Then we'll talk about the regulatory framework and how it applies to products marketed in the US. And we'll end the discussion with information about social media and influencer marketing. Next slide, please. Businesses that I'm working with will sometimes ask how much compliance with particular requirements really matters, either because they're small or they're only selling online, or because the statements they make are authorized in their home country. One of the most important reasons to comply, of course, is because consumers expect it, and it builds brand loyalty. But there are other factors to consider as well. For example, competitors watch closely. Well-established brands that know their industry and products operate in compliance with the regulations notice brands when they don't. We'll talk about an example of that in just a minute. And sometimes when they see businesses operating uncompetitively, they'll litigate. It matters to retailers, most of which, like Amazon, have requirements that relate to federal regulation. FDA warning letters and 483s present problems for businesses, and FTC can assess costly monetary penalties. States, when not preempted by federal law, also have their own requirements. Watchdog organizations like the National Advertising Division monitor businesses, and sometimes actions are filed on behalf of allegedly misled or harmed consumers. For many businesses, the only pressure they'll feel to comply will come from retailers. But by understanding the rules and aligning with the regulatory requirements, brands can operate successfully and safely anywhere in the US. Next slide, please. E-commerce sales have been growing steadily, even before 2020. But as we all know, COVID has been a real catalyst for online sales. A recent study with Incisive showed online grocery sales increasing more than 60% over pre-pandemic estimates. Amazon's online grocery sales tripled in the second quarter last year as a result of stay-at-home orders. And according to New Hope's Nutrition Business Journal, immunity supplement sales growth was projected to spike above 25% in 2020. The growth potential, they say, may be the highest in a decade. Amazon, however, doesn't have a strong reputation for product compliance, and the shortages, both of product and the supply necessary to manufacture the product, created even more concern about purity, safety, and efficacy of products marketed on Amazon. Next slide, please. As a result, the Office of U.S. Homeland Security Investigations partnered with industry to combat fraud and illegal activity associated with COVID. Amazon welcomed that partnership to protect consumers and ensure a trusted shopping experience. As you can see, Amazon says it stopped more than 6.5 million products with inaccurate claims, and that was during just the first half of 2020. But even after Amazon began removing products from its platform, the Center for Science in the Public Interest identified 46 products on Amazon that made improper claims. It said these 46 were just a sampling of the illegal and potentially unsafe supplements currently sold on Amazon and other online retailers. It called on Amazon to delist the products and to work with FDA and FTC to better protect consumers. Next slide, please. Amazon was hit again in 2020 when a number of US jurisdictions ruled that Amazon could be liable for defective products sold by third-party sellers on its website. And then finally, at the end of last year, FDA warned consumers directly not to purchase 50 products Amazon was selling that it deemed unsafe. Whether brands are selling dietary supplements, COVID masks, or food, there is undoubtedly much greater focus around compliance and liability at Amazon. And although foods typically attract less compliance attention than dietary supplements, we expect to see more and more functional foods being marketed, many as immune boosting. There are clear regulatory guidelines in the US for the kinds of claims that can be made for foods compared to those for dietary supplements. But this is an area where I see brands struggle a lot. And Amazon, I expect, will be looking at any product categories that present risk. In February 2021, just last month, Amazon posted its new guidelines for dietary supplements. Next slide, please. Although these requirements have created a flurry in the industry as Amazon delists products that are now out of compliance, many industry leaders in the dietary supplement space welcomed this change. US-based Now Foods, which distributes over 1,500 health and nutrition products, made public lab testing it conducted on CoQ10 and SAMe products it purchased on Amazon. The products contained far less of the dietary ingredients than declared on the label. Some had none. Now asked Amazon to take action and provided the test results to FDA. This new Amazon policy addresses these kinds of issues by requiring dietary supplement manufacturers to produce either a certificate of analysis from an accredited lab or a third-party quality certification. Product images that include the supplement facts panel and ingredient list are now required. This information, surprisingly, was previously unavailable for a significant number of products. And then last, brands must guarantee that the product is manufactured under current good manufacturing practices and that the ingredients are lawful and safe for consumption. These specific requirements for dietary supplements are new, but Amazon also has compliance policies at its Seller Central site for chilled and frozen foods, organic products, infant formula, baby food, and pet food. Amazon may be one of the biggest, but it isn't the only retailer with regulatory-related requirements with which brands need to comply. It makes sense for brands to undertake a regulatory review of their products to make sure they meet the necessary requirements to offer products for sale in the US market. Post-COVID, people are paying more attention. And for some brands, especially those interested in marketing products to natural and organic buyers, they may also wish to check their formulations to ensure they meet retail-specific ingredient requirements as well. Next slide, please. One of the challenges with the retailer requirements is that they vary, focusing on different aspects of compliance. But businesses should also be aware more generally of US regulatory requirements. Businesses have to comply with US requirements whenever they introduce or deliver for introduction into US interstate commerce any food, drug, device, or cosmetic. This includes businesses that sell products on Amazon to US customers, of course, but also to those who sell products from their own websites to US customers. While businesses are certainly required to comply with current good manufacturing practices, when they first reach out to us, they're typically focused on creating US compliant labeling. At Market Ready, we help businesses understand the requirements associated with importing product to the US, and we work with the brands to bring their labeling and advertising into compliance. Ensuring that products are not misbranded is essential and one of the most visible indicators of US compliance. Understanding the regulatory framework around this process can be really helpful. Next slide, please. FDA regulates about 78% of the US food supply and is responsible for more than 2.8 trillion in consumption of food, medical products, and tobacco. Foods, dietary supplements, and cosmetics do not require FDA pre-approval to import into the US. In some areas, the FDA and FTC have overlapping jurisdiction. For efficiency reasons, they've agreed that by default, FDA will take primary responsibility for the labeling of food, drugs, devices, and cosmetics, and FTC will take primary responsibility for the advertising of these products, except for prescription drugs. Their authority isn't limited to these areas, but it is the way they generally operate. Products are misbranded when the labeling is false or misleading, and advertising has to be truthful and not misleading. The line between labeling and advertising isn't always clear. Some people think that FDA regulates only the products and FTC regulates promotional materials, but that's really not the best way to think about it. The place to start is in defining labeling. Next slide, please. Labeling is a lot more than the label on the product. In the US, labeling is defined as all labels and other written, printed, or graphic materials accompanying a product when it is put into interstate commerce. The word accompanying is really important. It doesn't mean literally accompanying. It's used in the figurative sense. So when a product is sold on your website, the website becomes part of the labeling for the product. If you promote the product on other platforms and they link back to your website where you sell product, those other platforms become part of your labeling. The sales sheet and marketing that are distributed to promote the product are labeling. And yes, advertising is also a kind of labeling, though FDA and FTC have agreed that if it's advertising, FTC will take primary responsibility unless they decide to handle it differently. Businesses often focus just on the product label, especially international businesses, because they know there are specific steps that need to be taken to make the labels US compliant. Some don't realize that the sales sheets and other marketing that accompany the product are also part of the labeling and need to be considered as part of the context when evaluating label compliance. This has practical implications. To determine whether a claim is acceptable or whether a product should be considered a cosmetic or drug, for example, FDA looks at intended use. Statements on labels, websites, and marketing materials are all evidence of intended use, and it's important to consider the overall impression in context to arrive at the correct regulatory decision about a product. Next slide, please. When I work with clients, some issues come up again and again. This is a short list of best practices that address some of those common issues. The first is to avoid making claims that a product or ingredient can treat or prevent a disease. International businesses in particular often make statements in their labeling that are considered disease statements in the US. This is because the US has fewer authorized health claims than many other countries. It also comes up a lot on websites. While the product label may be well done, businesses commonly include a blog page on their website with articles about their products or the ingredients in their products. Frequently, the articles include non-compliant claims that the business wouldn't put on their product label, but do allow as content on their sites. Because websites are considered labeling, the same rules apply to the product label and the web page. Another common problem is that brands are familiar with the types of claims appropriate for dietary supplement products and believe that those claims will also be suitable for foods and cosmetics. Often they're not. The third issue is the one we're talking about now. Labeling is more than the product label. You should apply the same rules to your website, social media posts, and sales sheets. Claims have to be truthful, not misleading, and properly substantiated. I recommend to the businesses I work with that they keep a substantiation file to support each claim they make in their labeling and marketing. Claims like clinically proven or quantified claims like 20% higher require a higher level of substantiation. And last, testimonials without proper disclosure and other endorsements can cause issues for businesses. And that's what we're going to cover next. Next slide, please. Let's start with endorsements on websites, and then we'll address influencer marketing. When I review websites for businesses, I often see a page of endorsements or posts from customers. And quite often, I see claims that just can't be present. Brands understand that they can't make certain statements, but sometimes believe that when a customer shares their truth about a product experience, then it's acceptable. I have a short list of best practices for endorsements. Next slide. Endorsements cannot be used to make a claim that a brand couldn't make itself. If a customer says a topical cream relieved their joint discomfort and posts it in the comments on the website, that's a problem. Endorsements have to be true, and material connections must be disclosed. A material connection to a brand means any personal, family, employment, or financial relationship to that brand. It includes receiving a free product. Brands are responsible for the statements. If the customer with joint pain posts it on the website, the brand is responsible for taking it down. And when brands use a network of bloggers or are engaged in influencer marketing, they need a compliance program to monitor the network. Here's why. Next slide, please. In March 2020, 3 celebrity influencers received warning letters from the FTC that their Instagram posts did not adequately disclose that the endorsements were paid. Each influencer received at least $500 to post, though the amount doesn't matter. It's just the fact that they received the payment. The FTC also objected because they claimed the products, which were detox teas, could prevent colds, cancer, and cause rapid weight loss. These were prohibited statements and unsubstantiated. It's true that these were celebrity influencers. They had a lot of followers. But it's also true that 2 years earlier, the brand had implemented a social media policy in response to an earlier letter from FTC that ought to have protected the brand. Unfortunately, the brand's paid influencers didn't comply with that policy, and the brand didn't monitor the policy for compliance. The result, a $15.2 million judgment. Because the brand didn't have the funds to pay the full amount, they ultimately ended up settling with FTC for $1 million. Next slide, please. The $15.2 million judgment was a message from FTC to industry. It should encourage businesses to understand the rules and make sure that they're followed. It doesn't mean brands shouldn't use influencer marketing, though. In the last couple of years, influencer marketing has become widely popular and effective. The fact that COVID has pushed so many people online means the power of influencer marketing will continue to grow. At New Hope Network, we help brands send samples to influencers whose followers are interested in health and nutrition. The influencers try the products and then offer their opinions, which provides visibility and attention for these products. One of the service Market Ready offers is a monitoring program for our own influencer sampling program. We also offer something similar for the in-house marketing programs offered by brands themselves. Brands using social media networks to advertise their products need to have reasonable programs in place to train and monitor members of their network. Given the number of social media platforms and the frequency that people post and collect likes, a brand isn't expected to be aware of every single statement made by a member of the network. It is up to brands, however, to make a reasonable effort to know what participants in the network are saying. When companies have a reasonable training, monitoring, and compliance program in place, it helps protect them from law enforcement action, even if a blogger posts non-compliant statements. If you're going to use influencers in the US to market product, you'll want to have a program in place. Explain to influencers what they can and can't say. Provide them with a list of approved claims and instruct them not to go beyond those claims. Make sure they disclose their connection to you and then monitor what members of your network are posting. If you see non-compliant statements, be sure to take them down and follow up if you find questionable practices. And remember, if influencers are posting from abroad, US law applies if it's reasonably foreseeable that the post will affect US consumers. Next slide, please. Thank you for joining me today. If you have any questions about market entry or U.S. regulatory compliance, please feel free to reach out to me at Market Ready.